What is up, everybody? Zito, ZTV, Zoomers, Mandalsies, man, whatever. So, people who have seen my Dolzy WWE channel and my main channel have known that I've taken a break because of stuff that's happened over the last few weeks. For those who don't know what happened, it was the evening of October 26th of this year, my grandmother passed away. I got some of the stuff we had here, including one of those flyers at the funeral home made in honor of her. Yeah, you can kind of make out everything in there. They had a flyer there at the church and everything that they did, and there was a DVD tribute that they did at the funeral home that my grandfather and I got a copy of and everything, but this has not been a fun period of time by any stretch of the imagination. I think the only way I can discuss this is to bring up when all of these problems began, which was, I believe it was even August 28th of 2017, whatever the last Sunday of August of 2017 was. The day before, my grandparents and I were in the garage, and my grandfather has this hitched trailer that we put on the back of one of our cars, because we don't have a truck anymore, so we attach a hitch to one of the cars, load stuff in there, and put a net there to try to tie everything down in case he was ever delivering anything. And that's what we were doing, because my grandfather was planning to bring stuff to my Uncle TJ's house, who lives out of town. So we did that, and then the next day, the Sunday that I'm now referring to, my grandfather was out of town, and he was delivering stuff to my Uncle TJ's house, and that whole day, I was just going through insomnia. I was trying to sleep away, not being able to get comfortable. And one of the things I try to do in order to help me get comfy, to try to get drowsy and be able to fall back asleep, is lay in my chair, although at the time it was that black chair you guys probably saw a few years ago on video, to try to just lay there in my chair to try to get drowsy enough so I can fall back asleep. 6 o'clock that afternoon / late afternoon, I'm laying there just staring at my monitors and everything, just trying to relax. And my grandmother comes through my door, and I notice her face and chest that she was holding onto with a little red. She's like, "I can't breathe." Now, mind you, I only hear her breathe heavily 2 different reasons ever in the past. She's either having a low blood sugar attack because she had diabetes, or she was out of breath from walking around a lot. Problem is, she never said she can't breathe whenever she's having low blood sugar, and she was not walking around a lot because we never even left the house that day. One second. So, I got up, sat her down at the kitchen table, and thankfully during this whole time she was responsive and conscious and everything, so there was a plus there. She was able to tell me, "Call Grandpa, see where he's at." So I grabbed her cell phone, tried calling his number, but after a few seconds of silence rather than ringing, I just hung up the phone because I was not waiting for him to answer his phone. And then she said, "Call 911. I'm like, "Are you sure?" She said yes, so I'm like, alright. And for the only time in my life, I picked up the phone, called 911. Paramedic and an officer came for an emergency car, and by the time the paramedics got there, I got 3 different phone calls. One from my mom asking why the neighbors around her house were calling her about all this. One from my neighbor across the street asking what's going on, and one from Uncle TJ because he saw my grandfather got a call and he was wondering why I was calling him. So the paramedics came. My mom made it there in time. They got her in the ambulance and everything. And I decided to stay home because I said, in case anybody calls, I'll be there on the phone. My mom drove with the ambulance to go to the hospital. And about an hour, around an hour or so later, I made it to the hospital, and my Aunt Heidi came along and brought me over there because, I was still a mess, I hadn't gotten shot or anything. So we had to go to the hospital, and by the time we got to the waiting room, there was myself, my Uncle TJ, my Aunt Heidi, my mom, Cousin Vicky, my great Aunt Liz, and my grandfather, and then my brother came along a bit later. Grandfather and I went into the ER area by my grandmother. She was laying there in the hospital bed and everything, and we noticed she had more color in one arm than the other. And she looked at me and thanked me for calling 911. I'm like, of course, I wasn't going to let anything happen to you. That was not a fun little thing to go through. Now, during the time, I also kept trying to, in the meantime, while my grandmother was away in the hospital and everything, I tried calling in at work, because it's I I didn't think it was right to go in, but I couldn't get through the call-in line, so still went to work the night. Got home the next morning around 7:20ish, and then went to bed about 10 o'clock, and then a couple hours later I heard the phone go off. But I didn't answer because I'm trying to sleep, and I barely got sleep the day before. It was Michael TJ trying to call, so he came over and said, hey, do you want to go to the hospital? Grandma's having heart surgery, because they transported her to another hospital for further observation. And I said no for two reasons. One, didn't think anything of it. And two, because I barely had any sleep. I had like 2 hours of sleep at that point, so it was like, I just needed to get some sleep. And so he went off, and I woke up later that night. I think it was like around 9:30. My grandfather came home, and I asked him, what was this whole thing about having heart surgery? And his exact words were, she had a heart attack. That was the point where my mind was blown. Like, neither she nor I knew she was having a heart attack, like, at all. Like, normally when you think heart attack, you think serious chest pain shooting up and down the left arm, stuff like that. She didn't have any of those symptoms, and yet she didn't even know she was having a heart attack. So it was like, if I wasn't still living here or anything, we would have lost her 2 years ago. So thankfully she came home about a week after the heart attack, and we thought things were going to get better, but things didn't get better as we thought. Ever since, I think, March of last year, more health problems started coming along. She had one day back in March of last year where she had been sick for a couple days, on a Friday and Saturday, and then on Sunday, she was still unwell. My grandfather was in the den watching TV, and my grandmother was in bed. And I heard her trying to call for my grandfather, but she couldn't yell loud enough, so I went to check on her. She says, you need to go to the bathroom. I'm like, all right. Held her arm, walked to the bathroom. Then when it was time to help her get out of the bathroom, call my grandfather over. I held one arm, he held the other. She took a few steps, and then she fainted. Just completely fell on her butt, leaning against the wall right next to the shower. My grandfather just did not know what was going on, so it was like, we're gonna call 911. And ambulance got there and everything, because we didn't know what was going on. For a moment, she didn't even remember why she was in the bathroom to begin with. And according to the doctor, she had both a blood infection and a urinary tract infection, which is why she had been feeling sick and then suddenly fainted in the bathroom. And then ever since then, the problems just kept piling up. It was just being at home, an ambulance ride, nursing home to rehab, going to the hospital to get her checked out, and whatever problems kept popping up. Like, she had blood infections, urinary tract infections, she had that heart attack. Earlier this year, she was back in the hospital to get that stent replaced in her heart because it had collapsed a year and a half after her heart attack. She was just not happy about any of this. She had a hematoma the size of a football right around where her stomach is. That was something I couldn't even look at, because it was just, she tried to show me, like, size of football, I'm like, no, I can't even look at it. She had freaking norovirus not so long before, like, the last time she was home, which I think was, like, September. So, like, just a couple months ago, she had the freaking norovirus. Just constant in and out of places. She would sometimes be home, and then suddenly she's gone again. We would have nurses come around to check on her and everything, to make sure her health was properly done. She was just constantly saying she wants to come home, but it's like, she wasn't well enough to do so. So, last time I saw her before she went to the hospital was 2 weeks before she passed. My grandfather and I went out to dinner, and he was originally going to drop me off at home, and I was like, aren't we going to go see her? He's like, no, you don't want to see her. You need to go and everything. I'm like, I want to go see her. He's like, all right. Went to the nursing home, put on that yellow gown and rubber gloves and everything. She was just happy to see me. She was lying there in her bed. And I think after we left, a few hours later, she was rushed to the ER due to breathing problems. Still didn't make sense. So now, fast forward now to her final week. It was October the 20th, she got readmitted back to the hospital. And on the 24th, which was on a Thursday, brought her to the ICU because she was diagnosed with double pneumonia. I remember I got there that day, a whole family was getting there, and my Aunt Heidi told me that they were pretty much putting her on life support. because things did not look good. The whole family was just getting devastated. My grandfather and I went, like, we were trying to do 2 people apiece to see her to not crowd the room. My grandfather and I were the first 2 people there as soon as I got there. I remember I could feel that anxiety and emotion building up in my chest just sitting next to her and just watching her there in the bed. I later left, people were coming and going and everything. My second time I just went there on my own, stood there in the doorway. I saw her in that bed and I just lost it. Because it hurt to see her like that. So then we were there for a few hours. We left around 3:30, and we were told by the doctors they're going to observe her for 24 hours to see what happens. Now, I did not go visit her the next day because I was trying to sleep because it was after work and everything. And from what my grandfather said, her numbers were up and down, so we did not know just yet. So, next day, October 26th, which was on a Saturday, my grandfather and I both woke up at 6. He ended up accidentally waking me up. He went to the hospital and everything, and around 11 o'clock, I got a text message from my cousin Edward because I was telling him about stuff that was going on because we didn't know what was happening yet. He's like, "Hey, how's your grandma doing?" I'm like, "I'm not sure. I haven't seen her in a couple days." And then a bit later, he texts me back saying, "I just talked to your mom. You might want to hurry up and get down there." That's when I knew that something was happening. So I took a shower, got dressed and everything, came over here. I grabbed my wallets, my Nintendo Switch as a way to try to distract myself from all this stuff going on, my cell phone, and this little dog plush. I've had this one since 2010 when my great-grandmother, Arlene, passed, my grandmother's mother. She used to like to play bingo and get stuffed animals and everything, and they would be on her big board that was above her headrest in bed, and I've had this ever since the night she passed because this one was my favorite. So I kept this along with me that whole time. So got in the car, drove to the hospital, and I did not even tell anybody I was coming. By the time I got up there, the only people there in the room with everybody else was my mom, my Uncle TJ, and my grandfather. Got up there, they were like, "Hey, did you drive yourself?" I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much." Put the gown on in the rubber gloves and my grandfather was holding a clipboard with a paper, but I did not read it yet. Walked in there, my grandmother saw me. She instantly, like the moment she saw me, she opened her arms because she wanted a hug. And I did not hesitate to hug her for the last time. And I did not know what was going on. This was like shortly after noon, and my grandfather showed me the clipboard that he had in his hand with a piece of paper. Since she couldn't talk, she had that respirator oxygen mask the whole time on, and she didn't have any energy to speak. She was writing notes to everybody. And she wrote one to my grandfather saying, "Let me go, I won't get better." She knew there was no coming back from this. I don't know if she knew exactly what she had, but she knew there was no coming back. She just got tired of fighting. And I did everything I could to stay by her side for the next 8 hours. We had people constantly coming and going. We had her lawyer come along, and we had a preacher from a nearby town, or minister, whatever his job title was, being there and everything. Family and friends coming and going, and the only time I was not by her side, aside from the 2 times that they kind of turned her to make sure she was cleaning everything and checking the sheets, the first time they did that was like around 3:30, 4 o'clock. I went downstairs and just to the cafeteria to get a bottle of Mountain Dew because it was hot in the room and I was thirsty. By 4 o'clock, they took the oxygen mask off of her at her request. And I lost count of how many times, like how much time I spent there sitting by her bedside holding her hand, because I knew this was going to be one of the longest days of my life. And we were just waiting for everybody to come along and everything, and the last thing she was able to say was, Dell? And for those who don't know, Dell is her brother, my great uncle. Wondering where he was, and we said he was coming. He was on his way down to come see her. It was 8 o'clock. They turned her one more time to check her and everything. And they said, alright, you guys can come back in now. I got it. I was the first one in there. I stood to her left. I saw just pale all on her face. Everybody hurried in. And those were the longest, 5 minutes ever. Grandfather held her left hand. I think my mom was on her right side. Her breathing just became shallow to the point where you couldn't hear her breathe. It was just the whole time. My great uncle Del made it within the last minute or two. And at approximately 8:04 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on October 26, 2019, she took her final breath. And we could hear it because you heard a bit of a gargle sound, just almost like a... And that was it. It was at... It was at that moment where officially my grandmother was gone. She was only 75 years old. She was less than 2 months away from her 53rd wedding anniversary. And now she's gone. It was, just last week, Tuesday afternoon, we had the visitation services, and then last Wednesday morning, she finally had her funeral, and we laid her to rest. And thankfully, I know where she's buried right now, so we don't have the headstone set yet because of the time of the year, but now I know where I can go if I need to go visit her. Just even looking at these things right here on my desk hurt and everything, because the photo that you see on there, that was from her 50th wedding anniversary from back in 2016. This whole thing was just that tribute video that the gentleman from the funeral home put together with all of the photos that we went through before funeral service and everything happened for a tribute video to her. And the picture here at the top, that was one that I personally found in the book, big box of pictures and everything, and I found that one, and they ended up put that for the top of the pamphlet on here, and I can show at least two. Yeah, they expanded photo with my grandfather, even back when they were dating and everything. And just even looking at this stuff is just not fun. Even looking at all the stuff that they were putting for the book and everything at the church, there was even a poster here. She used to have that poster on the back of her door in her bedroom, and we don't know where she put it. I swear the last couple weeks has just been a complete fucking nightmare. It's like to think if I wasn't here a couple years ago, we would have lost her. Would not have had these last couple years with her, and she just kept fighting and fighting every ailment that just kept coming her way. Like I said, the heart attack, the blood infection, urinary tract infection, the hematoma on the side of her stomach, the freaking norovirus she contracted. She was getting even injections near her eye and everything to try to preserve her eyesight because she was getting, like, the doctors say she was at risk of eventually becoming blind and everything for a while. And then double pneumonia, which even doctors say she wasn't going to bounce back from, which she somehow knew, and she just finally gave up. And she even wrote me a message that I posted on Instagram the night she passed. She asked me to take care of my grandfather for her. And this whole period's just been rough on both of us, because after she passed and everything, I stepped out of the hospital to go to the car, and it was just pouring rain and just blowing wind and everything. So it's like, great. How convenient. A pouring rainy day, I lose my grandmother. And we still got that message on a paper, and when I can, I'm going to get that framed. I'm going to have it somewhere here in my room. I'm not getting rid of that last message she wrote to me. But, that's pretty much where we're at now. Like I said, this last little while has just been so chaotic. And I would give anything for her to be alive again. Because I just fucking miss her. I swear, there's some moments where I feel fine, and others where I just fucking lose it. So, that's pretty much the whole update on what's been going on. I just don't know. I don't know how I haven't lost my shit yet, because this has not been easy for myself or even for my grandfather, because it's like almost 53 years of marriage. We're just trying to figure out what we do from this point on. Trying to make sure we got our own bills covered and everything, and insurance, and fuck. I think that's all I got to say. If you guys want to comment, feel free to do so. I think I'm just have everything to say. I'm gonna miss her so much. Thank you.